Boom. What up, fam? Anthony Dream Johnson here, president of the fucking Manosphere, excuse me. Proud founder of 21 Studios, 21 Convention, 22 Convention, 21 University, co-founder and CEO of the Red Man Group. Today in episode 119 of the Red Man Group, we're going to be talking about the red pill and religion, mostly Christianity, but also some other religious, faiths as well. And joining me on today's show, I got two very special guests, including the one and only and returning to the show many times, Mr. George Bruno, the Sultan of Silver, YouTuber extraordinaire, over 150,000 followers on YouTube, and a new panelist to the show who will be joining us as well at 21 Summit and the 21 Convention Patriarchy Edition, as well as the 22 Convention to Make Women Great Again. And his name is Michael Foster, and he's a Christian pastor. So without further ado, please welcome to the show today, Mr. George Bruno and Pastor Michael Foster. How you doing, boys?
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Yeah. I have a feeling it's going to be a really fun show. I'm very excited. I know the red pill and religion are two obviously controversial topics, but bringing them together is a lot of fun. And you don't see that too much in the Manosphere, somewhat. You have a couple blogs that focus on it, like Dalrock, and I know there's like a red pill Christian subreddit, for example, on Reddit, but mostly these are, not the main focal points. So it's gonna be interesting to talk about it. So before we get further into the show, Michael, you're new to the Red Man Group. A lot of our fans are not familiar with you yet. Can you tell us about your mission and your history? Like, for example, you're Patriarch of 7, which is amazing. You're making Tanner Guzzi jealous, as well as myself. So tell us about your history and how you found the Manosphere and what the guys are gonna get for you today. Like, where do you come from?
Sure. Well, I've been married to my wife Emily for just shy of 18 years. Like you said, we have 7 kids, 4 boys, 3 girls, 14 all the way down to 4 months. So it's always busy around our house. I've been a pastor on and off for 20 years. Planted churches. Been a youth pastor. Done. I did a skateboard ministry way back in the day. Then I was an associate pastor in a Presbyterian church, the conservative side. And now I'm planting another church right here in Cincinnati, Ohio, right outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been into sexuality a long time. Yeah, I remember where it really clicked for me. I was in a sociology class in my freshman year at Northern Kentucky University. And they were showing this tribe. They showed this big greased up black bodybuilder to these tribal people out in Africa. And they said, man, that is a huge woman. Just the concept, the way people perceive things, I was immediately interested. And if you read the early church fathers, like the Alexandrian fathers, the first couple centuries of Christianity, issues of the body and the purpose of the body and the importance of sexuality, all that stuff comes up. And I studied ancient history in my undergrad. So I've been into that topic for a long time, but in terms of the Manosphere, it really came home to me probably about 3 or 4 years ago. About 4 years ago, I would give advice to young men on how to navigate relationships with women and what the red pill would call the sexual marketplace. Okay. And it just didn't work. Like I clearly did not understand the world they're living in, because me and my wife, we started dating in 1999, right before the internet exploded. And the internet is a huge fault line on the way things have changed. This is why there's kind of a generational gap. Most boomers, with the exception of the wonderful George Bruno, most boomers don't get this because it's not their experience. They're from a different world. And even guys like me that are kind of late Gen X, I'm born in 1980. I knew analog and digital. Some of it didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand how bad things had changed. But I do remember a moment where I would see these girls who were very average, and that's me being very kind, breaking up with these guys that were awesome guys. These guys, like, I could think of one girl. She looked just like her brother, which was not a good thing. And she had this guy who was in the Navy. He could play the guitar. He was a doctor. He was good looking. He was just a genuine guy. And she thought she was too good for him. And I was like, what in the world? This guy is you better snatch this up and lock it down forever. But then I started seeing that over and over and over again. And I was getting frustrated. Like, what's wrong with these women? Why can't these guys I care about find a good woman? So I I saw the
You
Jordan.
must have missed the memo, man. It's all men's fault. Men are just, women are perfect, and men are just the fault of all these things.
Well, my wife.
You need some femsplaining is what you need.
That's right. My wife would tell you while we were going to marriage counseling, I would cuss the whole way there and cuss the whole way back, because when we would go to marriage counseling, the pastor was a nice guy, but he would talk about how all guys are like Homer Simpson, more or less. And I'm like, I'm not like that. I'm very emotionally available. I do get things done. This doesn't relate to me. And I was just, I thought like, no, my wife, she's the one with the temper in our relationship, not me, but they didn't have that concept, because it was that basic idea that women are little angels and men are the blame for everything. And so that idea was in the back of my head. But then I saw these guys getting into Jordan Peterson. So I listened to his lectures, went down the rabbit hole, read, The Way of the, what is it? What's that one book?
The Way of the Superior Man?
Yeah, The Way of Superior Man. I read the Rational Male series. I read No More Mr. Nice Guy by Glover. I started reading all that stuff, watching all the videos, because, guys don't have fathers, so they don't know how to change their oil sometimes. So where do you go to find out how to change your oil? You go to the internet. You go to YouTube. Well, if you don't know how to be a man, if you don't know how to get a woman, where do you go to? You go to YouTube. So at the time, I was part-time in the ministry, and I had my own company. So on company hours, I listened to hundreds and hundreds I actually listened to a lot of the Red Man group. I listened to a lot of the 21 lectures, and kind of got steeped in why guys were going here, because they wouldn't find the practical thing. So I'm coming from it from not because I haven't had a divorce. My marriage is fine. God's been really good to me. I'm coming at it because I love my brothers, right? And some of them don't have fathers, and I didn't have the greatest dad, but now I'm 40 and going gray. Well, I don't get the luxury of looking for mentors. I have to step up and be one. So I want to be able to give these guys counsel and advice that is biblical, it's true, but it's also for the world we live in at this moment. So that's where I'm coming from.
Sounds awesome, man. And I hear you have a kind of a tangent, but related somewhat to what you were just talking about here. I heard you have a really high notch count. Can you talk to me about that?
My really high notch count. Well, you don't. It's not that easy to get pregnant, so you don't get 7 kids on 7 tries.
Elbow grease. You got to put in the effort.
You got to put in the work. Yeah, man. Look, sex is a gift from God, and women should want the best man they should get. That can take an evil direction when hypergamy goes off the rails, and men should want to have a high notch count, but that too can go off the rails too. And so, a man and a woman, they should be really into each other all the time.
No, I agree with that too, man. A lot of guys say, you just made me think of a question too. We can talk about both of you. But a lot of guys in the manosphere, they don't want to talk about too high of a notch count on themselves being a problem. And I think it can be. Maybe not always, but I think it can be eventually. I think for women, it's way faster and way quicker. But for men, it can be a problem too. And no one wants to talk about that. It's really, everyone just wants to dismiss it as, nah, it's not true, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. But I think it does. I've had girls even say to me, they hear about, my life meeting and sleeping with women. And one of them was like, that must be really traumatic. And it was a savage. I was like, damn. I was like, there's some truth to that. Now, I don't know if she's speaking from her own experience, probably. Maybe not. But certainly it was directed at me. And I was like, yeah, there's something there. But I want to pause here too. So George, we found Michael talking for a little while here. George, you've been in the Manosphere a couple of years now. You were introduced to it through, I think, Richard Cooper and myself and 21 Convention back in like 2016, 2017. So, as a Christian, you're really into this. What has your experience been observing the Manosphere, particularly the red pill wing of the Manosphere that really wants to focus on the truth about men and women, a lot like Michael's talking about here, that men today are not equipped to see what's going on today and to navigate the sexual marketplace. They get bulldozed, routinely, whether it's divorce court or toxic relationships or anything in between. So what's been your observation of the Manosphere these years as a Christian?
Observation is this, that men look to the most radical extremes for everything, whether it be all women suck, all women are like that, or use all the women, like the guys that brag about a high notch count on one side of their mouth, and then on the other side of their mouth, they're saying all women are sluts and there's no pure women out there. And I'm thinking, they fail to make the connection. Maybe you had something to do with that, with your notch count, that all women are easy. So there's this strange disconnect. Okay, I've slept with 300 women, but there's no good women out there.
You mean like confirmation bias, right? Almost with this?
In other words, if I can do it, you can do it. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly what I observed right away without judgment. The other thing is this, is that there is a concept in scholarship, called going deep into a topic when you're studying something. And you can go deep and you can go wide. My favorite scholars are those that go deep and wide. The manosphere is known for going very wide and being like when I look at a puddle, a giant puddle, it's only an inch deep, but it could be as big as a parking lot. Like a parking lot can be covered with water with only that much water. It's not a lake. It's only an inch deep. Whereas a lake or a pond can be as big as a parking lot, but be 30 feet deep. I think what we need to do as men is go deep and wide, rather than just creating experiences for ourselves and living vicariously off of other people's experiences, which is a huge manosphere pastime.
Yep.
Why not go deep? I mean, we love hearing stories of conquests and victories. When Michael Foster first said to me that he has a high notch count with his wife, that little hook was just that nail. And instantly, like, I went from laughter to a sigh because I thought, I wanted that. So I look at what Michael is doing as what I wanted to do, but was unable to do for one reason or another. And I just think about the head start that he has on his life. And I'm just thinking, my Lord, when this man is my age, just the wisdom that's going to be flowing out of him and the people are going to be seeking him out. I mean, it's just beginning. Michael, it's as if you just graduated from college and you have this whole career in front of you. You've got this thing right now that's just, the world is your oyster, man, because people are so thirsty and so hungry. Talk about like thirsty men. Men are so thirsty for knowledge. Hence, Jordan Peterson writing a book saying, make your bed, clean your room. It's like, that's not very profound, but it was to millions and millions of men. So the bar is not real high right now. So the entry point is somewhat low, but for someone who has a good message that is deep and wide, you're going to be way more than a one-trick pony. You're going to be way more popular than a one-book author. Those are my thoughts. Yeah.
That's very kind.
Yeah. Now, Michael, going back a few minutes here, you talked about hypergamy kind of running off the rails, I think you put it, or something similar to that. Women, I think you're actually mentioning, the way I interpreted what you're talking about is the attitude women widely today are having. And it can be very unhealthy. And it makes, and when you observe it, it's like, what the fuck, or excuse me, what is going on here? I cuss a lot. I'll try to moderate that this episode. But my question is, when women do this, how does this relate to the 7 deadly sins? Are those mechanisms, so to speak? I'm not a Christian myself, but to me, it looks like greed and the envy and these things. Is that a part of how hypergamy can run off the rails? Do you have some comments on that?
Sure. So the way I look at hypergamy and even the male sex drive, which is way more intense than women, at least it's stable in its intensity, is that the initial command in Genesis that God gives to mankind is to be fruitful, multiply, and subdue the earth. right? So we're supposed to rule over everything. That's why when men see a mountain, they want to climb it or they want to shape it into something, right? We look, little boys dig in the dirt. And that's because from an early age, little boys want to shape the earth. Little boys want to have conquest. That's why I remember a story of a mom that took away all the guns from their kids because, guns are bad. And the little boy ate his peanut butter sandwich into the shape of a gun and was shooting it, right? This is how men are wired. We're wired for conquest, to rule, to build, right? And so a woman wants a man that can conquer, that can build, that can get it done. That's like built into them by God. And so that's more or less what hypergamy is, looking for a man of the highest status you can get. Now, where it goes off the rails is where women monkey branch from guy to guy to guy to guy in this never-ending quest for the best guy they can get. And they're never satisfied. And that not being satisfied can come from one thinking that a man exists to satisfy them. Men and women don't exist to satisfy each other. My wife can never satisfy me perfectly. That's not what she's made to do. And I can't satisfy her. I'm not a romantic. I don't believe in soulmates. I don't think I'm incomplete and my wife completes me. I don't buy that. As a man, I'm fine as a man, and her as a woman, she's fine as a woman. But if we're going to build a household, right, which in scripture isn't just a home for Netflix and chill, but it's your influence, your property. You go look at Abraham's household. His nephew gets kidnapped and he goes to war with 4 kings, and because that's his household was 300 some servants and all this stuff, right? A household there wasn't this like myopic, emaciated little thing we deal with. It is this incredible place of influence, and the people that I've had in my home, the influence I've had on people is intense, and my wife is part of it by us practicing hospitality and her being sweet and listening to him and bringing her feminine energy to that. So if we want to build that household, I need a woman. I'm not asexual. I can't cut pieces of me off to make people, right? Me and my wife have to come together as one and have babies. But more than that, my sons need a mother. My daughters need a mother. They need a father. This is how we build our household together. So the problem with hypergamy and the problem with the male sex drive is it's removed from a telos, right? An ultimate purpose, something bigger than itself. And relationships that are always facing inward are doomed. This is why we see so many people get divorced after the kids leave the house, right? Because they usually have a kid that's about a junior, senior. The last of the kids that are a junior, senior, mom and dad get a divorce, and that's because the biggest purpose that marriage had was those kids, and it wasn't any bigger than that. And that was enough to sustain it for a time. But if you think your wife is going to always sustain you and vice versa, it's going to be really it's not going to happen. And so this is the problem with hypergamy, is that she is just looking for pleasure and satisfaction, just like the guys that have these high notch counts, right? Yeah. Those guys with a high notch count, they have nothing that I want. I don't need anything they have. I mean, their friendship, I'm sure I could learn wisdom here and there. But I go home to a woman that I've built a lot with, right? And she and I have aged together. It's like you see those trees where they grow around like a power line. Right, that's me and her. We're wrapped together. Where I began and she ends, who knows anymore? And we've got these children, and we're planning this church, and we're building this life, and we want our great grandchildren to have a heritage from us. That hypergamy goes off the rails when it loses its purpose. My wife, I look at her, I always tell her this. She doesn't like this. George thought this was funny, but I always tell my wife that she's my grape, and I'm going to get all the juice out of her until she's a prune. Right, every bit she has. Everything she has, I'm going to get out of her, and everything I have, I'm going to give to her, and we're going to build this thing together. And so I think hypergamy and dudes sleeping around, ultimately, it leads to a very sad life. I do think multiple partners have a different psychological effect on women than it does men. Doesn't change its sinfulness, but in terms of its consequences, don't play out identically.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that, and it's something I think a lot of Christians even wouldn't want to say. But I think that's true in terms of biology, in terms of nature. Like you believe that God, created nature, and then we came out this way and stuff. But I agree. Yeah, it hurts someone. It reminds me the way I use it a lot. Actually, the way I think of it is in terms of Adam and Eve. Like we made it for the screenshot or the thumbnail for this entire episode. It's like women today in terms of hypergamy and promiscuous behavior. It's like they're not just biting an apple, they're biting like the whole tree. They're like, let me take all the apples and bite all the apples. And it's just like more toxic and more toxic and more toxic. And I know Dalrock, for example, that Christian Manosphere blogger, he even said that a lot of what we call dating today is serial monogamy, relationship after relationship after relationship after relationship. Even that's just a different form of promiscuous behavior that they're kind of dressing up and disguising as not promiscuous, but really, especially in terms of Christianity, this is all the same thing. It's I guess a little bit different. 20 guys versus 80 or 15 versus 40, but it's like, right, in terms before the eyes of God, that would be basically the same thing, right?
I mean, ultimately, I'm sure there's a point where there's so little left of you that the difference between 20 and 25 is, minute. And I think Dalrock's basically right. I think what women and men need to realize is that there's a portion of your life where you have, so women are known by their beauty, men are known by their strength. Like if you're just going to be real simplistic, you're going to say something tweetable. So your external beauty as a woman will fade at a time. Scripture says that over and over again. But if you've built this life together with someone, at the end of your life, you'll have this deep spiritual beauty, this character. And you see it, like I see it in women who maybe aren't naturally that attractive, but as they grow in spiritual beauty, there is a real difference in them. There's something very attractive about that. Just like a guy, you think of a guy that's like fat, not in shape, when he has confidence and swagger, it can offset a lot of that. And so just like so you're going to get weak as a man at some point. I know all these guys and look, I'm 60 years old and here's my abs and all that. That's fine. But that's not everybody. Not everyone has those genes. And some of y'all are spending a lot of time to do that. And if you had 7 kids and 20 grandkids, maybe it wouldn't be as much. I don't know. But my point is your strength is going to diminish, but the strength of your character, strength of your accomplishments, that might be intense. So when me and Emily are old and we're both prunes, she'll remain, have a spiritual beauty after her physical beauty fades to some degree, and I'll have a spiritual strength. But these women, they're right now using their beauty, their external beauty, and but it's not going to be there forever. And so at some point it's gone, and then they have no character. They're not likable.
They're like gambling addicts. They're just gambling, man, just throwing chips down the left and right.
Throwing it away, and they're not getting there. You could get awesome ROI. You could get good return on investment if you find a good, hardworking dude that appreciates you and then has some vision and drive in the life. Yeah, maybe he's not the best dude you think you could get, but then you'll wake up over time. And we watch people who look like a big deal for a moment, and then they're gone. I mean, how many of these celebrities come and go? They're just constant. And so you have to have that vision. But
women, I think they've really been ingrained against that kind of mission, like you just talked about here. Finding a guy, hardworking, all that stuff. They really want to. Feminism has basically told them they can have their cake and eat it too, and it's convinced them of this at a really big scale and a very intense level. They really believe this. And then, of course, it doesn't work out that way, and they end up freaking out when they realize they can't have it all. And then they hit the 30 wall and they start scrambling. And 35, they really start freaking out, doing crazy crap. And they thought they could just do whatever and live this life. And it's like, no, that Sex and the City life is a life of shit. To put it nicely.
The hardest people to deal with in the ministry as a pastor are old people with no family. I remember hearing he who shall not be named talk about how there is that the old lonely man is like a myth or it's not true. What the hell is he talking about? I've been in the ministry. I know lots of old lonely men. What sort of crack does someone have to smoke to think that? They're like, I know a lot of old lonely men, and they're not nearly as bad as old lonely women though. And with so as a pastor, you spend time with these older women. Their kids have moved away. Maybe they didn't have very many kids or whatever. And you spend a couple hours with them on a Friday and they're still not satisfied, right? It's like your water and they're the Sahara. You can never satisfy them. And it's because they have this energy and desire that should be spent on the grandkids and all that, but they're not around, right? So I don't know what these churches think they're going to do when all these 30-year-olds and 35-year-olds get up in the 50s and 60s. Because I'll tell you, as a pastor, you will not be able to manage a church like that. And women that are old and have nothing to do, all they do is gossip and cause hell in a church. Paul talks about that in First Timothy 5. He straight up says
Gross.
in 1 Timothy 5, you guys can go read it right now. He says, look, if the younger widows, I want them to marry, because if they don't get married, they'll become busybodies going from house to house, right? And that's exactly what happens. So all these churches that claim that they love single women, and they feed their delusion of being having a career and getting the alpha male and having, the 2 perfect kids when they're 40 or whatever. Those pastors are going to be held accountable for God for the hell that they cause in this earth, when they've got churches full of old women that are miserable. And that's what I had a meeting with the pastor and told that to his face. I said, well, we'll find out who loves singles more, you or me, in about 20 years.
Yep. Quick commercial break here. Thanks for the super chat from North South, $5. Thanks for looking up for fathers, guys. Thank you, sir. We'll get into fatherhood actually a little bit later in the show. Let's bring that up later. But speaking of the church, this is a big topic, and I wanted to get into an article that George, pointed out to me. And I know, Michael, that you're familiar with the rough draft of this too. You're even familiar with the author. I think you know him. So let's talk about the church and feminism specifically. You can call it blue pill lies or whatever, but I like using feminism, beating up on feminism. It's my favorite punching bag pinata. But talk to me about the church today, the Christian church, and feminism. And I know that you're not like, there's many denominations of Christianity, but from my perspective as a young American, it seems like almost every church and every denomination of Christianity has basically wimped out, cucked out, whatever you want to call it. Not every church, but most of them, it seems, have really bent the knee to feminism and, the female imperative and all this crap. It's like women cannot be held, like when is the last time women were held accountable in a church or talked to in any way that was not combative, but just abrasive and kind of like, hey, you need to get back in line. So talk to me about that as both of you, actually. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this article, and then, the influence of feminism on the Christian church, any denomination you want to look at.
Yeah, when I read that article, one of the things that I saw was, and I agree with about 1/3 of what the guy says. And towards the end, he started talking about, well, Scripture elevates women here in this instance. Jesus, the first people to come to the tomb were women. The women who cared for Jesus, the people that cared for Jesus were females, when he was on the cross, and all these. And the author keeps saying he elevated women, and I'm like, Scripture's not elevating women. It's not putting them down, but it's mentioning them. But the Scripture also mentions a lot of things. So I think this guy basically scratched the surface of the Manosphere, read a little bit about it, and wrote an article. I don't think that tea bag was steeped very long in the water, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's weak. To me, it reminds me of your typical Mother's Day sermon in church, which I usually can't stand. All the moms get like a yellow rose or a yellow carnation. And then the whole Sunday is devoted to, all the women in the Bible. Okay, that's cool. Father's Day comes around, we should be giving fathers like brass knuckles or an axe or something on Father's Day Sunday, but it's just kind of a happy Father's Day. It's a mention in the church bulletin. My experience after being in several denominations is that Mother's Day is way bigger of a deal than, as a matter of fact, it's on the same level as Palm Sunday, where everybody gets palms, like all the moms get like a flower or something like that.
Whereas Father's Day is kind of barely acknowledged, basically.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. But the article, I get it. I get what he's trying to do. But like I said, I don't think that tea bag was steeped too long in the water.
Is this guy a pastor or a reverend, or what is he?
Aaron,
Michael can answer that.
Sure. It's funny you read. I thought the article, maybe it's an issue of audience. I know Aaron is trying to introduce a Christian world that doesn't understand the Manosphere, doesn't know anything about it. So I think what you might be feeling in his desire to build a bridge for the church to understand it more. I don't know, but Aaron is into city planning. He's very well educated. He worked for a think tank in New York for a long, long time, and has recently relocated to the Midwest, not far from where I'm at. I think he's a very smart guy. And if you want to see where he's at, that maybe a deeper dive than this article, you can go to Amazon Prime, and there's Man Rampant, which is a TV show that Doug Wilson does, who's another pastor who's very conversant in sexuality. And he has an episode on there with Aaron Renn, where Aaron Renn just destroys the idea of servant leadership, which is a way to get men to be basically pack mules for women. And so I think that would be a more helpful introduction for some of the guys that are already watching the Red Man Group, or guys that are pretty deep into this world. But you know, I remember Aaron telling me once, I think he told me this, or I read him say it, that that he got more practical help from reading Cernovich's Guerrilla Mindset than he ever did from any pastor, right? And so I think he's pretty hip to what's going on. I think some of these guys think the Manosphere is dead. I think it's just going through another iteration. I think it's changing and growing for the positive, actually.
Yeah,
my personal take.
Yeah, I agree. And I saw that comment here somewhere at the end of the article, just briefly looking through it. Yeah, the Manosphere is largely, that's ridiculous. Yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah.
I guess if he's not super familiar with it, maybe you would think that with the Reddit quarantines and whatnot, but this is kind of delusional. If anything, the Manosphere kind of blew up this year. Last year, a little bit with 3 major conventions. And then this year we had, the Manosphere reached a new mainstream audience this year, thanks to me and my friends with 22 convention. We reached like 150 million people with links and interviews from major news sites. And it actually got bigger this year in a sense. But maybe what he's saying, the only thing I would agree with the Manosphere dying, I don't think it's dying, but it's the sub-communities are kind of fizzling out, and it's becoming harder to see the boundaries, the lines in the sand between these distinct communities. Men's rights, MGTOW, Red Pill, and even the PUA or dating coaches these days. And I think that's actually a good thing. I think the Manosphere is blending into a larger cohesive movement. And we're in like maybe a transition period right now. We're transitioning, right? Haha. But I think it's really good. And I think long-term, that's going to make the Manosphere a lot more powerful because we're finding common ground between these different communities by building bridges and interviews and collaborations. George, for example, I've been doing that a lot, obviously. It's like what I do all day, every day. But George has been doing this a lot lately, too. George was interviewing recently Coach Greg Adams and Sean Smith. And these collabs are really important. They connect communities and they connect content creators. And that builds the community and makes it more cohesive and bigger.
Also, too, if you just Google Manosphere, you're going to be led to a Wikipedia entry that basically describes us as like terrorists in the making, and we're part of a hate group and white supremacy. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I have never, and believe me, I've mixed with everybody. I've communicated with everybody, publicly, privately, shared stages with everybody. I know all the players on the chessboard. I've never run into a white supremacist. I've never run into a potential, serial killer, a school shooter, or, I'm thinking, what the heck are they? The Southern Poverty Law Center has a hate map or something like that, and a few of our guys, I think, are on that hate map. I'm like, what? And when I went to it, I'm like, what are they talking about? Now, I'm not afraid. I am not afraid to pull back the curtain. I'm not afraid to flip the lights on and watch the cockroaches scatter. I could give a shit because I got skin in the game, but I'm not afraid to lose a little skin. So I'm not here to preserve secrets in any form or fashion. And honestly, if I felt that there were dangerous men in the Manosphere, I would out their asses so fast. I would confront them. I would do videos on them. And the people that I think are dangerous are the ones who are the extremists here. I think they're not a danger to society. I think they're a danger to men. They're leading men astray. They're leading men off a cliff, but they're not responsible for that. They're the kind of people that would lead men off a cliff and they go, "What did I do? I didn't do anything wrong." I'm like, "Yes, you did, asshole." You've been training them to be hopeless and filled with despair for the past several years, and then you go, "I didn't do anything." It's like, shut the hell up. Yes, you did. I will point it out. And
I love your labeling of that wing of the Manosphere. You call it the Despairosphere. I think it's perfect.
Despairosphere. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Perfect. And it's a quick way to sift through like for instance, in the past couple of years, I've been single for 17 years now. Man, I went through all kinds of phases in 17 years, and not all of those phases are that I'm proud of. Let me put it that way. But that's where I was at. I don't make excuses for it, and I certainly disavow some of those years as far as sowing my wild oats as an older man, for lack of a better term. But I will say this, that I want to be married again. And 10 years ago, if you said that, 5 years ago, if anyone, nobody would believe me. Now, I would want to be married again. When done right, it's a positive thing. Michael Foster's been a wonderful influence on me, believe it or not, even though he's 20 years my junior. I will say this, though, as I've announced it recently, and most of the stuff that I do is fairly public, I announced to my audience, and I'll tell you what, all the cockroaches came out when I said I want to get married again. And I kind of tell who they've been influenced by. So I've been on a blocking fest for the past, and delete fest for the past week with the negativity. And I thought,
now these guys are these are members of the Church of Hypergamy, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And I can tell because of the language, the glossary. It's almost like they're reading from the glossary. And
they've been legitimately. It's funny, but it's funny, but it's not funny because they've been legitimately indoctrinated to speak in a certain way and use certain language, very much like Scientology. That's what Sean Smith is saying lately about certain components of what we see in the Manosphere, that it's really like Scientology.
The biggest thing about cults is this. It's not so much what you do to get in, but what happens when you try to get out. The social shaming. And when you try to get out of the cult of hypergamy, literally, you get attacked every which way, from every angle. And I build a tribe of positivity and optimism. And I will never forget, during the Patriarch convention last year, I kept talking about hope, positivity, and optimism. Those were the three words that I used. And that was a big turn for a lot of people. And people weren't used to that. Some bristled at the concept of hope, positivity, and optimism. Others, literally, I forced others during my 21 report that I do at the convention, I forced others to contemplate the concept of hope, positivity, and optimism. And I asked direct questions, and I said, in a world where everyone says, I would never bring a child into this world, give us hope and tell us why we should be fathers, why we should get married, why we should bring children into the world. And I saw men sit up, literally get an inch taller, 2 inches taller in their chair. I saw them puff their chest out. I saw them all of a sudden say, wow, finally, someone asked me to explain why this is a good thing. And the Patriarch interviews on the 21 report are some of the most powerful interviews. And I've done, have I done 100 of them yet? Pretty close to it, right?
Probably. Maybe, maybe more. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have done,
but
yeah.
Quite a few. So the Patriarch conversations were powerful. I remember telling Stefan Molyneux, telling everyone, from Cernovich to Molyneux to Elliot, all the guys, Tanner, I would, at the very end of my conversation with them, I would say, look into the camera and give some hope to the person who's watching this right now. And these guys would just literally disconnect from the conversation and talk right to the camera. And I will never forget Stefan saying something like, get married, have children, save the world.
Yep.
And I wasn't ready for him to say that. And it just took me back. And then he looked over at me, and there was this like weird, uncomfortable silence. And I couldn't even end the show properly. I just said, wow, because it affected me. He was only 3 feet away from me, and it blew me away. And I saw the truth in that. And that helped vulcanize and strengthen my direction that is fueled by hope, positivity, and optimism. And I can't believe how many people fight hope, fight positivity. Oh, you're being an idealist. Oh, you're being blue pill. It's like, shut the hell up, you idiots. Just shut up. And I'm done arguing with idiots. I'm done.
They're all, a lot of it's just like black pill in disguise as red pill. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so your question, I think, really was like a Socratic kind of question, Socratic questioning. You're highlighting the ridiculous BS that they, how I can't have a child today. Can you imagine having a child in today's world? It's like, you live in the world is not perfect. It's far from perfect, but you live in the most comfortable, ridiculously nice time in human history. Like, everyone before us has lived in poverty and sickness and disease and endless war and misery and no toilet paper. Toilet paper is still a brand new invention for our species. Never mind the internet and all these things. And like, yeah, it's so stupid when I hear that people say that. Not just Manosphere guys, but even normies will say this stuff too. Oh, I don't want to have kids because I don't want to overpopulate. It's like, shut the F up. You're an idiot. You're brainwashed. Vomit that crap up and stop thinking about it because it's stupid, ridiculous BS. Yeah.
I will tell you this. I grew up in the 60s in the time of Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Cold War shit. I'm talking hardcore. At any minute now, Russia could press the button and vaporize us. Literally.
You get under your desk and put your hands over your head and stuff.
We went under our desk. We did the desk drills. We went into the basement, ducked down, kiss your ass goodbye kind of stuff.
Yep.
Did all that. And there was a bunch of literature that came out in the 60s and early 70s, things, and even late 50s, like On the Beach. It was this apocalyptic stuff about nuclear bombs and the post-nuclear age societies. And there was a nihilism that was absolutely rampant in the 60s where people were saying, why even try? It's all going to we're all going to end up vaporized by a bomb anyways. And what have we seen in the past 5 or 6 years? Everything comes in cycles. The whole post-apocalyptic thing came back with The Walking Dead and post-apocalyptic graphic novels, and the artwork is just magnificent. I love all the post-apocalyptic artwork. And it's making a comeback. And the only thing that is the bright light in that whole dark, nihilistic, why even try? Russia can push the button at any minute. The only light is the man who's carrying a lantern. That's it. So we have to carry that lantern through this dark, nihilistic world and show people by our lives that life is worth living. Life is wonderful when you're married. It's shitty when you get divorced. But if you're married and have kids, it's a wonderful thing. But you know what gets the most press? The squeaky wheel, the shitty stories.
Yeah, guys that get burnt, they're attracted to that kind of stuff. They want to hear. They love seeing. It's like they talk about the hate. Guys say they hate drama. It's BS usually. They love drama. They love seeing guys beat up on women and this and that. And there's plenty of subject matter today with Only Thoughts, Only Fans, and all this crap. The thought apocalypse is upon us. That much, at least as a stand-up comedy kind of bit. That's very legit. Yeah. But I did want to bring up something that I thought was interesting too. Maybe you guys have seen this website and this article, but it's a secular patriarchy. And by the title, you can kind of understand what it's about. But he's actually, I believe, a Christian. And he's kind of promoting patriarchy, what you would consider maybe biblical patriarchy, but from a secular perspective. He wants to advocate it for everyone, kind of like I do. I'm not Christian, I'm not Muslim, I'm not any of these things, but I really believe strongly in patriarchy and building it, bringing it back, 100%. But he put out this article about Make Women Great Again back in January, reviewing what we're doing to Make Women Great Again and all that. And he was all about it. He was ecstatic about it. But he brought up really good points about how 2019, when he was talked a lot about the Patriarch edition that we did last year for the first time, and now we're doing it again this year for a 21 convention. And it really just brought up a lot of good points, I thought, in this article. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but basically how bringing the patriarchy into the manosphere, that wasn't really done before last year. I didn't think a lot about it that way. To me, it was just kind of, doing my thing. Like Anthony Johnson just causing trouble and bringing back the patriarchy and rounding up fathers for an awesome event. But this guy really figured out, and I think he put it together, that this was a big point. And, well, I can say his name, but the Rollery, the fraud father, I think was a champion of being against this in a way, even though he was at the event. It was the last time he spoke at our events. It really rubbed because patriarchy and traditional gender roles and biblical gender roles, so to speak, that really rubs a lot of the manosphere the wrong way. Even having a voice in the manosphere, never mind you agree with it or not, whatever, but that even being now present and being formalized into a new wing of the manosphere with a convention and content and speakers, yeah, it really ruffled a lot of black pill feathers and like these like ultra dark red pillars that just don't want to hear it. You know, enjoy the decline. We're all doomed. Why have kids? Blah blah blah. It's all stupid nonsense. But anyway, I thought his write up about this issue. I haven't seen it elsewhere. Basically, I haven't seen anyone else address basically the injection of patriarchy, the injection of that level of masculinity from a fatherhood perspective into the manosphere. So that was kind of cool. And he also brought up a good point too. This guy, Secular Patriarchy, that when we did the Patriarch edition, it got a little bit of press in the conservative media, but not much. And that was kind of surprising because patriarchy is a really triggering word even today. But he made the good point that it wasn't until men stopped talking to just men. It's like the feminists wanted to let us have our fun, patriarchy, ha ha ha. But it wasn't until we're like, hey, we're going to talk to women. We're going to mansplain. We're going to put a conference together for women, and we're going to speak from a position of masculine authority to them. And they're eager and they want to hear it. And he made the good point that that's really what set the feminists on fire. They couldn't stand that. The patriarchy, men getting together, they could tolerate that for a little while, but talking to women and making women great again with no women speakers, that was just high treason. But yeah, for anybody who hasn't seen this article, I recommend you go check it out. Make Women Great Again, Secular Patriarchy. You just search Secular Patriarchy. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that. The injection it was kind of sudden last year, but bringing the patriarchy into the manosphere.
I think it's wonderful. I'm glad you guys did it. I think this is where I found myself at odds with a lot of the people in the red pill community is that I think patriarchy is inevitable. I think it's natural. I don't think there's any way around it. Nothing can stop it. This world will always be patriarchal. Even now, in one sense, it remains patriarchal. So we can say that the laws have been changed not to benefit men. So if we're speaking merely in a legal sense, I get what they're talking about with the sort of toxic matriarchy, and I'm with them in needing to change that. But at the end of the day, the majority of the world leaders, the majority of people in real positions of powers in corporations are men. They still are. They always will be. Nothing will ever, ever, ever stop it. And I don't believe in this idea of this feminine imperative is something that happens without men being passive. That's not me blaming men. Like, oh, so it's men's fault. I mean, seriously, it gets on my nerves when guys like just snap like that. Like, what if it is? What if it is? Could you take responsibility for it? I'm not saying it is, but before you snap at me, I'm not interested in blaming people. I'm interested in fixing things.
Yes.
And I believe that men are designed to be leaders. I don't think you can stop this. And what we really need to tell men, and this is what I tell my sons. I always tell my sons, you can do this. God made you to do this. So the reason I know I can go out and get things done, why I don't have a loser mindset, is I am a man. I bear the image of God. God gave me the tools to do these things. I'm going to fill this world with my kids. You don't have kids? That's fine. You'll die, and my legacy will rule this whole place. I came to win.
This is awesome.
And when you listen to these guys, it's a loser mindset. Well, you don't think we can take these people? Are you seeing what's out there? Like, look, I had this dream. It was a weird dream. It's weird. I'm even going to confess I had this dream. But I had a dream that I was at the 22 convention, and someone surrounded our auditorium or whatever. It was like those Portland looking like protesters. And it was like all of us guys just went up there and just like decimated them in a second, because these are pasty white liberals, like that were coddled by their middle-class parents. You can't beat these people. We can win. And folks that have been on the fringe end up being committed to losing and staying on the fringe. The fringe will be the mainstream eventually. I have every intention of shifting the Overton window. Yes. My whole thing has been to shift the Overton window. I've been very careful as I've done things on Twitter. I've tried to. It's strategic. It's calculated. taking risks to going on shows like this. People criticize me and Christianity. That's fine. They can keep on losing. I have every intention of winning and moving the gospel forward and reaching men and finding co-belligerents and allies where we can shift things around. But I think talking about patriarchy, telling men, no, this is normal. This is natural. You can read Stephen Goldberg's, it was originally called the Why Men Rule is what it's called now. Everyone should go buy that book. It's actually endorsed by Margaret Mead, right? So she's like this terrible feminist, the mother of anthropology, but she says, look, this is solid. And the whole point of the book is that there has never, ever, ever been a matriarchy. There's been like this little blip, but the idea that there was like Amazon, like Wonder Woman, that stuff's nonsense. That's not true. That never happened. Like, it will always be patriarchy. The question isn't will men rule, but what type of men will rule? Because there is bad patriarchs. Yeah. Pharaoh was killing all the Israelites. Pilate against Jesus. We've seen Mao Zedong. We've seen evil men.
Dude, in parts of the Middle East today, with they're very patriarchal, so to speak, societies. But they throw gays off of buildings. They chop women's heads off. They stone women who are adulterous. They bury them in sand and then stone them to death in the face or something? I mean, this stuff is like way too far. And they haven't gone through Reformation yet, like Christianity did hundreds and hundreds of years ago to stop this stuff.
Let me tell you too, Christian patriarchy, I've seen it super weird. I've been in this world for a long time. And I've seen these guys, and I'll probably talk about this at the convention, so I don't want to give away too much, but we are coming from not just a fatherless background, many of us, but a traditionalist. We don't know who we are, right? We have a sense of location and place and history. So we look for something. That's why all these young men turn different YouTube personalities into like a god, that if you say something negative, like I said something negative about Jordan Peterson, and people are flipping out on Twitter, dude, get a life, right? I've said lots of good things. I've read his book. I've thought about this critically. I'm not writing everything off. He's not your hero, right? But they're looking for a father, and they're looking for a way to something to replicate. So in Christian,
the way I say it is, they turn an intellectual like Jordan Peterson into a digital daddy. He really is their digital daddy. They'll probably never even meet him. Maybe at a conference briefly, or I met him once briefly, for example. But other than that, he's like fatherlessness. Yeah, he's their digital daddy. And the minute you criticize anyone like that, they flip their crap. They go nuts.
Yep. And so you also see in the Christian world, I've seen these guys. I talked about how they're LARPers, right? So these guys will dress like Pa and Ma from Little House on the Prairie, and they'll stick their girls like in like little prairie muffins and no makeup, and they don't have driver's license. They don't really educate them. And, look, I understand why a feminist would hate that sort of upbringing. But these guys, they don't really know what it means to be a man, what it needs to be how to build a household. And so they're just going to look for the thing like, hey, I watch Little House on the Prairie. That looks wholesome and good. I'd like to, and then you see these guys watch these pickup artists, and they start dressing like peacocks and all this. And you're just like, no one knows what it means to be a man. And so when we start talking about patriarchy, we can start talking about productivity and what it actually means to lead a household and to build something bigger than yourself, and get past this LARPing, where people just fake it and never make it, so.
I gotta add something here. You really just made me think of something that I think is, I can't believe I didn't think of this sooner. So what you're talking about here, and George, I know, agrees with you 100%. I do as well. That there's a lot of young men today in general, but especially in the manosphere, that come from a fatherless, as well as whether it's physical or psychological or spiritual. Either the father wasn't there, or he might as well not have been, right? Because he was, super wimpy. He wasn't really a father in any masculine, strong sense which is what children need, right? But you also said traditionalist too. I think you said traditionalist, but traditionalist was really good. Hang on a second. Thanks. So what I realized though, and you talking about these things with patriarchy in particular, last year when we did the Patriarch edition, we did a patriarch conference, a fatherhood conference. I think we unintentionally triggered a crap ton of daddy issues in the manosphere. And I think part of the split we've seen since then is actually related to this very deep pain and issue that a lot of these men have. I mean, this has to be the majority of men in the manosphere come from this background, some sort of fatherless, background of some sort. And by doing a whole conference that was dedicated to strong radical fatherhood, as Elliot Hulse calls it, we stepped on a landmine that I didn't really intend to. I'm happy to have done it. I don't really mind. I didn't get hurt by it. But yeah, that was, to me, it was very natural and organic. I know George has complimented me on this, but I see the manosphere as a positive future for men, boys, and fathers. All three, and these are three demographics of males that you don't hear described like that. But I think that's the ultimate purpose of the manosphere. In a fundamental sense, I think that's basically why it was founded, and that's where it needs to keep heading, especially in a unified front way as best we can. But yeah, I didn't realize the Patriarch, doing a Patriarch conference that was brought to me, it wasn't even my own idea, really. It was Hunter Drew and Tanner who inspired Hunter, I guess, to come to me about it, to approach me about doing a conference like that. But yeah, I think we just basically, shotgun blasted daddy issues in the face just by wanting to do conference for fathers, not even really thinking about the wider implications it would have on the community. And now that we're doing it again.
George is right. I think you're dead on. I think when you talk about what a man can accomplish, that is hard for people who don't want to change and want to remain a victim, right? So when you give people hope, that might lead to action. And so I think we know that a lot of people online prey on the hopeless. And so like one line you'll hear in some red pill circles, if you listen carefully, is that, hey, I have an awesome life. I have an awesome wife, but you can't have this because the world sucks. Right. Yep. And so it's like, and it creates this really toxic scenario where you hold this guy up like, oh man, I wish I could be that guy, but I can't because, the whole world is feminine imperative. Everything's fine, and so when you give them hope, it's funny, people will fight you on hope. Yep. And I just tell them, no, you can do this. Well, yeah. I didn't get lucky like you. What do you mean? My wife didn't come like pre-made. Like the first 3 years of our marriage, lots of lamps were broken, intense arguments. I don't know how we didn't kill each other. And now my marriage is wonderful, but it took a long time to get there. And she is a firecracker at times, and
that family photo you sent me of you guys to promote for the event and stuff, she looks very happy. She looks happy and she looks submissive. Like she's in her role and she's enjoying it. And that smile, when women smile on the internet, I'm very skeptical because especially when their whole Instagram is nothing but smiles. It's kind of sociopathic. It's kind of weird. But that smile on your wife's face looks very genuine. And you look very masculine and stoic on your thing. And the look on her face just screams like, I'm a wife and I'm a mother and I'm loving it. And this guy's awesome. That's what I took when I saw that photo.
We went out for a walk today we walked like 4 miles today together.
Excuse me. You went for a walk with your wife? What are you, blue pill?
Man, I am so blue
pill. No wonder you have a blue shirt. Blue pill, blue shirt, white, right. Walking with your wife. Dork.
And now it's the worst. Pray for me. But we went out for a walk. We talked about life and what we're doing, and we were talking about how terrible modern architecture is and how we miss beautiful cathedrals. And if that sounds like a terrible time to you, then keep on keeping on is what I tell the red pill. If that's what it means to be red pill, is like to just use some game to get some half drunk chick at a party into your bed. You think that's life, you'll find out very quick that it's not.
We'll see. What you don't understand, Michael, is that when you got done with the walk, she went and monkey branched on you with 4 dudes. I mean,
we have 7 kids. There's no time.
You just don't get it. You just don't get it, man.
So when I blew up a while ago on one tweet, some guys like, I bet those aren't even his kids. First off, they all look like clones of me. Okay.
Yeah,
but we don't have time for that. I mean, the problem is these guys get married and they don't start having children right away. I always tell people, look, screw the cat, screw the puppy dog, put a baby in her, make a baby. Yeah. Let your love be fruitful.
Bun in the oven, man. 100%. This guy's
and
awesome.
the woman changes. It's amazing. Like, so when your wife becomes an efficiency machine once she has a baby. And I love it. I have to work hard to stay ahead of my wife. Now I get up about 2 hours before her and I'm always doing more than her. But for a long time, it was a real challenge because she was so productive. And I'm like, I'm not going to let this woman beat me in life. So
I got to say, my little sister just had her second baby. I'm going to go meet him this weekend. I can't wait. But, since she's become a mother, she became a mother at 28, was her first kid, Bryson. I'm a little nephew. I love him. But she was getting even better in life before that. She was getting her act together. And so things are working out really well for her. And I'm loving seeing that as her brother, big brother. But being a mother, I think, has really matured her and made her into more of an adult and really set her straight even more than she was. And it's just, I'm so proud to see it, but I'm also really happy to see it, and inspired in a way, and kind of just kind of impressed, and kind of I don't know what the word is. It gives me hope, I guess, for women that, not all of them end up single moms, end up, ruining their lives and ruining their kids. Statistically, this has been like proven and shown over and over again. But some of them, they get together with a father, they have kids, they stay married, they stay together, and they get better and better and more mature over time. And just seeing that in a woman, I've known her my whole life, and I remember the day she was born, my little sister. I was there. To see her now mature into a mother and now have two kids. Now she's figuring that out. But she just had the kid like a week ago. The kid's brand new. But she's figuring that out like an efficiency machine, like you're saying. She's figuring out how to do things even better and faster. And, she's now a stay-at-home mother again. She was working part-time when she had one kid, but now she's full-time, just a mother. And that's awesome. That's the way it should be. I think that's what makes women happy for most of their life. They should really they should get wifed up, knocked up. That's what I've been promoting with Make Women Great Again. And that really upsets the feminists, as you can imagine. Get wifed up, knocked up, 500% more feminine, all that. Let's pause here, though. I want to focus on something else here. So the transform wife, we talked about a little bit before the show. I love her tweets. I'm not religious, I'm not a Christian, but man, she's just awesome. Her meme of, with the women and the virgin, all these things, debt-free virgin, that was a big inspiration for what kind of direction to take Make Women Great Again. And I think she's just so fantastic. I've talked to her on email a couple times too. She's great. But I want to see what your thoughts are on her. For example, she's one of the things I like she tweets about most is that she tweets against and is very openly against female preachers in any Christian church, I think. Female, reverends and pastors. She's really against it. And she quotes from the Bible for why this is and this and that. Do you guys agree with that? And do you have comments on, literal female preachers and pastors in Christian churches and what kind of influence that's having?
I agree with her 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. So there's all sorts of scriptures, black and white, and then there's a lot of gray. There's certain things in scripture that are not open to interpretation. They're as clear as you want them. But then there's things like baptism. George and I, we baptize babies. We're Paedo-Baptists, but some people don't do that. And there's a deep argument there. But when it comes to women preachers, you literally have a verse that you couldn't ask for a better verse to make it clear. And I'll read it to you right here. This is 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 12. He says, "A woman must quietly receive instruction with entire submissiveness, but I do not allow a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man, but to remain quiet. For it was Adam who was first created, and then Eve. And it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman being deceived fell into transgression." So Paul, who wrote that 1 Timothy, he says, look, because of the order of creation, Adam's made first, then the woman, therefore women can't teach. And why that's as important is that it has nothing to do with the fall, the temptation that happened and everything, all the screwed up stuff that followed that. It's rooted not in culture, but in the very design of men and women. Every time a woman, a denomination adopts female ordination, the denomination goes rapidly into liberalism. And part of it is women do two things that are not good for leadership. Number one, I'll give you an example. I was trying to come up with names for my daughters. And my wife, I was like, what about this name? No, there's this girl in 3rd grade. I didn't like her. I was like, 3rd grade? What are you talking about? Well, what about this name? No, there's this other girl. And I'm thinking, man, women hold grudges. Where I remember my friend, we were team captains on the wrestling team. He called me a name and I told him, I bet you don't have the guts to whisper that in my ear. He was way bigger than me. And he whispered in my ear and I slugged him as hard as I could. Right, because I knew I couldn't hit him if I came in. I had to trick him. We were like fine later that day. I don't hold a grudge. Men, we're conflict is how we sort out the pecking order. And women, though, conflict for them is like total warfare. And so they're not good in leadership. The other thing is they also want to include people. And part of the church is including and excluding. Right. So as pastors, you have to say, no, that's not true. That's a false teaching. Therefore, you hurt my feelings. I don't really care about your feelings. It's about whether this is true or not. Well, women were like, hey, we want them to feel included. Well, that brings in liberal things, and the church goes liberal and dies really quick. So it's not just wrong, but it's bad. So wrong morally, theologically, but bad practically, what it does to the church. And so absolutely, she's right.
Yeah, and I really agree too with what you said earlier about men just being leaders. Men are designed to be leaders. I mean, I agree 100%. It's a very masculine thing. Women do not lead. I think women lead children fine, and I think that's what they're designed to do, especially young children. Maybe a little bit older too, but especially when they're young, they seem to interact better with babies, and there's probably some evolutionary biological reasons for that. Empathy and auditory cues, things like this. But yeah, they don't lead each other well, and they don't lead men at all. Or when they try, it just goes off the rails like that. Like you're saying in the church here, they value feelings over facts and what is true. Like you're just saying, men do prioritize much more aggressively what is true and what is false. They sort and sift black and white, true and false. And the women are like, well, what about the feelings? And it's like, feelings are not unimportant, but they're not number one here. Number one is what is true and what is false.
Exactly.
I mean, from their perspective, though, they see it. I mean, it's been interesting as I've gotten more and more into the red pill and stuff. It's like women, from their perspective, a lot of them really have a tough time grasping that because their feelings are so important to them. That's why they differ with us in this way, and they just have to do it. But I do believe it's a man's job and a man's role, especially in a relationship, to demand the priority be reality, in a sense, truth, what is true and what is false.
That's a good way to say it, is that instead of saying feelings versus fact, which is fine, but another way to say it, for men, we build our relationships on truth. Yeah. Where women will they'll align their truth to the relationships a lot of times. Because so if you think about, her job is to be a helpmate to a man and to raise a family. So her whole life is about knitting people together and nurture and relationships. And that's really good in its proper context. Yeah. But our job is to expand borders and keep out bad things. And so that's why men must be pastors. Women are terrible pastors.
Yeah. I want to pause here and that's savage. let's just women are terrible pastors. I think Lori Alexander would retweet that in a heartbeat. Yeah, 100%. She's great. Now here's a different question I want to get into. I've actually listed things I want to get into. We've just been talking here endlessly back and forth about organically throughout here. But talk to me about the spirit of Jezebel. Do you have comments on this? This is a Christian thing, I believe, spirit of Jezebel. Are we seeing that a lot more today with feminism? Is that spirit of Jezebel at a wide scale? Open floor on this.
Go, George. Tag George.
Yeah, I've seen Jesse Lee Peterson talk about it. Coach Greg Adams is really on it right now. The whole, what's he call her, Jazzy Bell, in order to not get banned or something like that. And it's basically a story, truthful story about how a woman caused a lot of trouble. And throughout history, how many women in the world are named Mary? A lot, right? Because of the Virgin Mary. But not a lot of people name their daughter Jezebel.
Yeah.
The name Mary is a beautiful name. It brings comfort. Even just the name brings comfort to people. The name Jezebel makes people like dig their feet into the ground and their nails, and like, you would never name a daughter Jezebel because it's synonymous with trouble and rebellion and
toxic femininity.
Toxic femininity all the way. Yeah. So to me, that's the spirit of Jezebel, so to speak.
Okay. Michael, do you have any comments on this?
There's a really good article by Robert Lopez or Bobby Lopez, and he was a guy caught up. He got canceled. He's a Christian professor. He was a homosexual, but repented of that lifestyle, has got him married, and is a wonderful man, good guy. He's wrote a really good article that breaks down the story in the Old Testament about Ahab and Jezebel. So I encourage everyone to Google that. I'll tweet it out when I find it. But so Jesus in Revelation talks about how in one of the churches that there's a woman that he calls a Jezebel that's teaching people and encouraging fornication and all this. And we see a lot of women like this nowadays. The church, these women, not very many of them are ugly. They all have like a sort of appeal to them, a sexual appeal at some level. Maybe they're on the other side of the bell curve, approaching or
Well, I think they're compensating for a lack of inner beauty a lot of the time. They have to overdo
right.
the outward appearance. Yeah. The same with the
Absolutely.
fake smile. It's signaling.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think probably I'm a little more worried about I think white knights are the biggest problem. If I had to choose to be stuck in an elevator with a radical lesbian feminist or a white knight, I would choose the radical lesbian feminist. I think we'd have a better conversation because I love reading radical feminist books. They're so honest, like Shulamite Firestone, Betty Friedan. They just more or less tell you what they believe. But when I'm with white knight Christian guys, they're so duplicitous and they're so two-faced.
Vichy males.
Yes, right. These are the guys that are in control of the church, and they cater to women and not to men, and they're always posturing themselves as this fair and balanced guy, but they always side with the women no matter what. And they won't
Michael,
speak the truth.
do you believe as a pastor it is your mission by God to root white knight garbage out of the church?
I'll do what I can. I hate it. Yeah, I'm here to destroy anything that goes against Scripture. Yeah, man. I'm Jesus is the only way. You're saved by the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You need to have faith to believe in it. I think I want to convert everybody. I don't hide it, but we can have a conversation. My whole when I'm coming down in the Manosphere, I speak at professional conferences. I don't do an altar call on them, but I'm a Christian all the time. This is who I am. God has plucked me out of the miry pit, and I hate the white knightism in the church. I despise it. I actually had people recently. A bunch of women complained to some elders at a church, and those elders wanted to talk to me about some things I tweeted. And so they see themselves as more reasonable and tactful than me. And they wanted to talk to me. And I was like, look, I'm not sorry. I don't apologize for anything. I meant it. I'll say it again. And I know you think you know how to do things better than me, but you're wrong, and we'll find out.
Yeah, those men are basically cowards. I could see you have courage and conviction in what you do, and these men are just cowards. And they try to dress it up, I think, with appeals to Christianity and God, but it's all BS. Yeah, they're hiding. Duplicitous, like you're saying. Yeah, it's BS.
And there's good men in those systems trying to incrementally change it, but they're so outnumbered. I know a lot of guys that I can think of a few pastors who were wussy feminists a decade ago, but they woke up somehow by God's grace. They read some good books, but now they're in this system, evangelicalism, and it's like trying to steer a cruise liner. It's really hard to move it, and they have to decide whether they're going to be hated or not. And they need to make the right decision. The thing that you want more than anything in this life.
Jesus said a good example, right? I mean, he was hated about. I mean, he was crucified in the end. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say too, I'm not a Christian myself. I was raised Catholic though, so I'm familiar with some Christian teachings. But I was baptized, confirmed, communion, all these things. But what I can say is that I really believe strongly. That's why I like Christians, hardcore ones. You guys are great. Tanner's a good example. All these guys, I love it. You guys have strength in your convictions, and you really believe in your beliefs. I don't mean to sound like some SJW feminist either. Doublespeak. I really mean that, and I love it because I believe it's beyond important in this life as a man, and then eventually as a father and whatever, if you become a father, to have powerful beliefs and to believe in what you do and to have conviction, no matter and independent of what your conviction is. Like, I really respect it because what I hate most and what I think is most dangerous is not having strong beliefs. Like you're saying about those radical feminists, you'd rather be in an elevator with a radical feminist who really believed in what they thought, right? Even if it was garbage nonsense. Rather than these squishy, wussy made up beta males, these wimps, these white knights. Because I think it's very dangerous because it leaves them open. Whether it's a liberal, these Antifa little weirdos, these weak men, Vichy males, it leaves them open to being manipulated by really, really toxic crap. And the people, like you're saying, the radical feminists, when they write, a lot of times they're open and they tell you what they believe, and it's horrible. They want to destroy the family, for example, and all this crap. They want to reduce men to 13% of the population, gender side. And some of this stuff is just beyond insane.
Absolutely.
But I think it's even worse though when they don't have a strong belief system. They just become these sheep, and these sheep can be then turned into either let off a cliff, or they can be turned into a really disgusting movement. Antifa would be one example today, and BLM and stuff. So powerful beliefs are so important in this life. And I love seeing that in you guys, even if I don't agree with all of it. I love it. Like I thrive around it. I have so much fun. Tanner, like I said, Tanner is one of my favorite guys because he's like so just like you. He's like 100% religious, 100%. In this case, he's Mormon, 100% Mormon, 100% of the time. I'm like, yes, this is fantastic. 100% patriarchy, 100% of the time. That's an interesting point too. Is at the convention, and George knows this really well from being there so many times. But it's such an amazing coalition of demographics, generations, races, and faiths, and it's so rare that you see that today. You hear it talked about, but it's all BS. You never see it. But at our convention, and it's a representation of the Manosphere. All 21 convention is the offline Manosphere gathering, a collection of leaders and of delegates in a sense. But how often do you see Muslims and Jews and Christians and Baptists and Catholics and Mormons all hanging out, like getting along, really getting along well, having dinner and drinks and cigars or whatever, and they come together on these common values of family and sometimes their faith, but also fatherhood and relationships and marriage and masculinity. It's so amazing, man. If yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I just love seeing it. And I love seeing it come together, and it's so rare and it's so powerful to see you guys come together. Because all you guys too, you'll believe in your stuff. I mean, you're not a Mormon, Michael, but Tanner is. But you guys have a lot of common ground with Christianity, and then with family, and with patriarchy, and with fatherhood, and knocking out unlimited kids, unlimited babies.
Tanner and I are at the very least co-belligerents. We would have deep theological disagreements. I know we would, but right now online, in terms of the enemies that are, we'll sort out our different. The enemies that are around us are a little. So it's with Trump is a great example of what's happened when Trump got elected. Everything changed. Like I was a third party voter. I was an ignorant, condescending libertarian, right? So libertarians exist to be above the fray. Oh, I didn't vote for them. They can always say that. They never want to own it. And that's who I was. But then I thought I couldn't vote for Trump because I just never thought he would keep his promises. I thought he was a New York liberal and he was just lying. Well, I was wrong. The guy wants to keep his promises. He's not a great representation of Christianity, but he has a sort of integrity and energy. And so it's changed the whole political lines, right? Everything's different. And right now we're going through some massive upheaval in the West. That this is historical what we're living through. This is like a big deal. And folks are just starting to catch on that 2020 is going to keep 2020. We're going through something different. And so it's the way we fight and who our co-belligerents and who our allies are and whatever. It's very complicated right now to figure out. So it's key to have integrity, stick to what you believe, don't compromise, but you do have to have your wits about you and have an end game in mind. So it's tricky.
This is a killer point, man. The alliances and the enemies that you have that you share. This is huge. That's another reason. So that at the convention, when we see these guys of different races and faiths and demographics, different generations, completely, they get along on common values and common goals. Positive masculinity, fatherhood, patriarchy, pushing back against feminism, all this stuff. But you bring up an important point that radical feminists and these liberal weirdos and these green-haired nut jobs, they hate both you and Tanner equally. The fact that all of you guys, like the Christians, right, George too, the fact that you guys have kids, the fact that you're leading your families and all this, they hate that. They want to destroy the family, whether it's the Mormon family or a Catholic family or a Presbyterian family or whatever. They don't care. They don't have any respect or interest in the differences that are important to you and Tanner yourselves. They don't care. That is not. It means nothing to them because it all is to be destroyed because it's all toxic patriarchy, evil patriarchy, BS. They're all just nihilists that want nihilists or nihilists, however you say it. I call them. It's the philosophy of the zero, is what Ayn Rand called it. Philosophy of the zero. 0, 0, 0, 0. Zero family, zero patriarchy, zero femininity, zero masculinity, zero capitalism. It's always 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's the equality they want. They want to equalize everything down to zero so that we all suffer, die, and starve to death.
You don't want to live by rule zero, right? But I'll give you an analogy, okay? So if we think of the West or our country as a boat, and it's taken on water, and you have two sets of people. You have the sets of people that are throwing the water out of the boat, and you have the sets of people that are trying to bring more water into the boat. All right. So the ones that are trying to keep the boat afloat, they are your allies, like it or not. Those are the people that are committed to staying alive at the moment. Those that are trying to put more water in the boat to sink it, they're the enemies.
Yes.
And so right now, like folks that are trying to get water out of the boat, well, like we may not like each other and we may have some significant differences, but we have this. We are committed to survival and to getting to our family. Those that are trying to sink the thing, they're our enemies. And so that's, I think, really hard for some Christians to see, because I have very mixed friend groups, right?
Yeah.
And that's because this is how will I ever introduce people to the gospel if I'm not friends with people I disagree?
Well, look
Paul
at the
says,
convention you're speaking at, 21 Convention Patriarch Edition. That's not a Christian conference.
yeah,
There's
you
many
guys are
races
taking a
and
risk
faiths
on
here.
me, and I'm taking a risk on you. We're taking a risk on each other, and
Yeah.
and folks have to see that. And that's where we're at right now. We have to we need bold men that are willing to blaze and also keep this boat from sinking, and figure out what's next. The church is the church in America, denominationally speaking, is almost dead. I'm not saying there aren't good pastors and good congregations, but everything is so far gone right now that I get in trouble for saying things that were commonplace just a couple hundred years ago. This is what the church has taught for 2,000 years, and I say it now, and you act like I'm some radical. You're the radical. I'm saying the truth. You're the fringe person that somehow stolen this because we sat on our hands at some point and we were nice when we should have been mean. And this is where we're at.
This is awesome, man. You're my favorite pastor, man. You and Jesse Lee. This is great, man. Yeah, but this is a great point, man. Yeah, you guys, we're allies, and we're putting water. With the water analogy you brought up, this is great. Yeah, I love it, man. And I'm not a Christian myself. Like I said, I'm not really religious at all. I'm not Jewish, I'm not Muslim, any of this stuff. I'm part Ashkenazi Jew, genetically, supposedly, according to my blood results. But whatever. At the end of the day, though, I don't get a pass either, just because I'm an objectivist atheist and all that. That doesn't matter. Whoa. The fact that I like fatherhood and I like masculinity and I hate feminism, they want me dead too. They won't. It's rare that sometimes they'll say that, but usually they'll just try to starve me to death, cancel me, and all this crap. But yeah, they hate me too. And it's we're all in this together in these uncertain times. These uncertain times and the new normal.
Unprecedented times. How many emails did you get from some ignorant Spotify CEO telling us, in these unprecedented times, we want to know that we stand with you. Now buy this.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about Adam and Eve. This to me, this is the origin, as far as I know, the creation myth of all the Abrahamic religions. The three main ones, and then these other ones, little smaller ones too. But I really think this is relevant to the Manosphere. I mean, it's relevant to a lot of things, obviously, but I want to talk about Adam and Eve, the creation myth here, because I view it as basically, there's a lot to it in Christianity, and that's different also from how the Muslims and the Jews interpret it, with original sin and stuff like that. But I view it as not only, they say the fall from grace, but I say it's a fall of the relationship between men and women, is one of the ways I view it. It's a woman, not looking to a man and all just disobeying God as well, another man, a masculine, the father, right? But it's a woman not seeking a man's counsel and leadership. And so it's the fall there. And it's also the man, though, not keeping an eye on his woman, keeping his leadership intact and proactive. We'll call it progressive leadership. So can you talk to me about Adam and Eve and your interpretation of it and what it means to you as a pastor?
Sure.
And the Manosphere as well, how it relates to the Manosphere.
Yeah, so I'll just put my cards on the table. I don't look at it as a myth. I look at it as history. I think Genesis chapter 1 is written in a poetic form. It's like a prologue that sets up, here's how things were made. And then it zooms in on day 6, which is all about men and women. And there's some real important things. Adam is made from the ground, brought to the ground to work the ground. And so man is oriented towards things, shaping things. Woman is made from the man and brought to the man. So women are highly relational, and they exist in orbit around a godly man, a good man, and they work together to build things. And so they're supposed to have this wonderful relationship that leads to productivity. But instead, Eve gives into the way of the serpent. The serpent should have been kept out of the garden. That was Adam's job, he was put in the garden to keep and guard it. It's the Hebrew words there, to protect it. And he fails in that way. And the woman listens to the serpent, gives the apple to Adam, or the fruit, whatever it was. And then they fall, and there's this sense of shame. Then God comes and he curses them. And the curse is super interesting. He curses Adam for listening to the voice of your wife, right? So Adam's main failure was and that's Genesis chapter 3. It's very clear. He shouldn't have listened to Eve, but he did. And so his failure was a failure of leadership right there, of being on mission for God. God gave him a mission: rule, reign, subdue, keep and protect the garden, be fruitful and multiply. And that woman, because she had a quest for more knowledge than she should, failed, right? And he went along with it, and he never should have. And so you can actually see a sort of man not being on mission in the fall. But so then he curses man. He says, look, now when you work the ground, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to bear fruit. It's going to be thorns and thistles, and you're going to sweat. So man's area of productivity is cursed. And anytime you want to fix a car, I always look like, hey, this is going to be super easy. Who can't fix brakes? And then I take apart my Toyota, and then there's some little ignorant pin on the rotor that I didn't know was going to be there, and it turns into this whole event, right? And so work is hard. But then when he curses the woman, he curses her that she's going to bear children in pain, and that's not just labor, but in life. Children are very difficult for a woman. Like when she sends her babies away to college, that's difficult on a woman. The whole process is letting them go, but also that she'll want to rule over her man. And that's a parallel with the sin wanting to rule over Cain in chapter 4 of Genesis. So it's a desire to rule a man. So instead of being his helper and working together, there is a inbuilt desire for a woman to at times supersede her man and tell him what to do. And that's the purpose of every sitcom ever, right? The nagging wife and the guy's a screw up or whatever. But
and it's super unhealthy. It's super toxic.
Oh, it's terrible. You can't get anything done, right? And you guys got to, so just like a guy can't give up on work and he can overcome the curse there to some degree, a woman can overcome the curse. My wife submits to me. Like, I never have to demand submission. Maybe like 3 times in our marriage, like, I don't know what these guys are always like commanding a woman to submit. Like, that's going to work. I don't know what they're talking about. Like, submit, but she
should want to. Should be natural for her to do it. Yeah.
I do rebuke her when she doesn't. I do say, look, what's difficult here? I've told you what we're doing. Why are you not following me on this? Where are we odds here? And I do reason with her. But so that's all right there. But the thing I want people to know is the devil hates sex. He hates it, right? He hates sex because he hates order. In scripture, this is where I differ with Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is a Jungian dualist. He sees everything as order and chaos and this eternal balance or whatever. Bullcrap. I don't buy it. God orders the world. God is a God of order and not of chaos, is what scripture says. So the devil wants to break down patriarchy because patriarchy brings order to the world. And when there's an order to the world, a rebel can't stage a rebellion. And so by turning the sexes against each other, creating a sex war, a gender war, there's confusion. And so who's behind the gender war? Well, the devil is, man. This is part of his thing. Men and women complement each other and should work together. We shouldn't be competing. And so part of my message is fighting against androgyny, which is downplaying the distinctions between men and women, and these guys that are feeding into the chaos in the gender war, they're doing the devil's work. And I see that in the red pill. I see that in feminism. Not all red pill, obviously, but not
all, but some.
But I'm talking about, there's guys that like, they straight up, I do think they hate women, and they think they're all their goods for is sex. And I think like, dudes, you're weak and your problem is that you have too small of a vision. And so I see all that coming out of Genesis. That's a big deal to the way I think, and shapes everything. I think they're prototypical. It's the what man and women should be, and we know that because Jesus, when he's I think it's Matthew 19. Jesus says, "Have you not heard from the beginning? We made a male and female," and he restates it and says this is the basis for marriage. So we know that it wasn't just pre-fall, but it carries on to all history. This is, you want to be like Adam, go conquer, shape, do it. You want a woman that follows you. There's going to be thorns and thistles. She's going to buck sometimes, but you can still build something together as you work these things out through the power of the gospel. That's what I preach anyhow.
Yeah, I love it, man. I phrase it a little differently. Usually I call it the collapse of gender relations. I think it's what we're seeing with feminism. I think it's the most intense we've ever seen it since maybe, Adam and Eve, like literally there. Yeah, when I said myth, I was just kind of reading off Wikipedia. I didn't mean to belittle your beliefs or anything like that.
No, I didn't take it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the marketplace of ideas. Let the best idea win.
Yeah. But yeah, the collapse of gender relations, I see it as a lethal kill shot to the West and to America. You have a specific biblical God Christian view of this. With that or without it, I think the collapse of gender relations, like you're talking about, I agree with you on these issues. It's going to kill America and it's going to kill Western civilization if it is not stopped and if it is not healed and if it is not made more positive and, like you're saying, complementary and working together in these things. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, man. And there is, I agree with you too, that there is some legitimate toxicity in the manosphere and in certain communities. And
I'm not trying to hate on them. I get where they're coming from. Like if you've lost everything, if you've had these women lead you on or whatever, I mean, I understand where people are burning, but do you want to stay there or do you want to move on? Do you want that to be the defining moment in your life, or is that the moment you pivot to do something greater?
Yeah, they got to go to George Bruno's channel and get unstuck. They're
That's
stuck.
right.
Got to unstuck them. George, before we move off this topic, do you have any comments on the belief? I don't know what word to use now. Anyway, Adam and Eve, the story of Adam and Eve and how this happened, and its influence on the manosphere and its relation to feminism and gender roles and gender relations that we see today that are in America, I think, collapsing before our eyes.
Yeah. Along with Michael Foster, I also believe it's a historical account, but a lot of lessons come out of that. A lot of lessons. And you can see Eve in a lot of women. You can see Adam in a lot of men. And we have to be taught, I look at it this way, in psychology, the field that I spent most of my career in, there was always the talk about nature versus nurture all the time. And I also believe there's a spiritual nature and a spiritual nurture as well. And I do believe that when it comes to spiritual nature, I do believe men want to build. You get two boys digging holes in the backyard, like 8-year-old boys digging holes. And one's going to say, my hole's bigger than yours. I dug mine deeper. Like I did more. Like it's naturally built within us to want to move, shake, to move the earth. Whereas a woman, a little girl, will have 5 dollies around a table and serve all of them tea, and they're all going to get along. And she talks to them. I mean, at 5 years old, little girls do this. Is that nature or nurture? Girls are quieter. They talk. They make their dolls talk to one another. Little girls, they want their dolls to get along, whereas boys make noises. They don't talk. They make gun sounds, power tool sounds, explosion sounds. We are different. And I do believe that the narrative of Adam and Eve shows the genesis, no pun intended, of what happened, where we went wrong as human beings, as men, as women. And it's not just a problem there, but there is a solution and an outcome. And the outcome is that they had to rely on God, period, to survive. And rather than be independent, the story wasn't like, well, then Adam went his own way. He became a MGTOW and Eve became a feminist. And the story doesn't the story doesn't end like that. The story is it's grand and it's glorious. And I think that's what we need to see, and not stop at the enmity and not stop at the toil, but look at what they created. They are our father and our mother, and they represent us. Would I have done any different? Adam represents me perfectly. Eve represents females perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, make mistakes. Yeah. Simping and disobedience and I guess feminist culture is slut culture, I call it in the end. So let's actually shift gears a little bit more. We need to wrap up soon, but I did want to talk about making women great again and slut culture. slut culture, salute culture, specifically, from a Christian perspective, religious perspective. But, Michael, what was your first response when you saw, your first thought and reaction when you saw Make Women Great Again, and you saw us, going to bat with the media and stuff earlier this year? Millions of people reached. What are your thoughts on that? How'd your wife respond to it too?
She thought it was funny. She thought it was hilarious. And she watched one of your interviews, and she thought she appreciated your straightforwardness. I forget which one it was, but look, I've had people trying to cancel me for a long time, and I get a message. We joke about it. I get a message about once a week, sometimes more, of some woman like telling me how I don't understand how my words hurt people, or sometimes it's her husband, like talking about it's really, she put him up to it. So I always have these women telling me how terrible of a misogynist I am and all this. And because I'm willing to apply standards to women and actually call women out for their sins, just like scripture does. You know what I mean? Like I don't, it's not the only thing I do. The reason I speak mostly to men is because honestly, I think they're easier to fix. Like, I think women have just been screwed over, and like it's like the big Christmas ball of lights. Where do I start to untie this thing? Yep. And honestly, the reason I agreed to speak at the 22 convention is to force myself to start to think about it a little harder, because I know what scripture mandates and what's true and what's good. Now, how do I help women who bought into the lie for the bulk of their 20s, got a lot of school debt, slept around with a lot of people? We're at least getting into the low double digits in number of partners for a lot of these people. Yep. How do I help these women? Where do we start? Because I can't just ignore them, but for me, it's a challenge, and I think it's good for us to want to help these women out. Like, there's a sort of like tongue-in-cheek coyness to the website, right? Make Women Great Again, and that's marketing, that's playing around. But these are our sisters, these are our mothers. Yes. These are the people that are going to be examples for our daughters. Yes. And so we have a commitment to trying to help them, because I don't want them to be miserable. I don't want a world full of miserable women. Honestly. Yep. The worst person to be around is a miserable woman. And
you describe my position on these issues perfectly, man. This is exactly how I believe about it. And that's the reason there's a tongue-in-cheek kind of coyness to it. And it really comes from a place of joy and the funny and these things. I know it's going to rile people up and antagonize them and polarize them, which is useful strategically, but it's also from a place of positivity. I want women to do well, particularly my countrywomen. Beyond that too, from Canadian women and British women and all that, they're affected by feminism as well. But I'm focused on, I live in America. I was born in America. I love my country. I don't want to see 160 million or whatever women do bad. They're doing really bad anyway. I don't want to see that continue. I want to see them do better. And that means abolishing feminism and making women great again and getting them back in the kitchen and pregnant and knocked up and wifed up and stuff.
What I always tell women, I was like, look, you're going to serve the patriarchy one way or another. There's no way around it. So what you do is you get your degree, and then you go to this corporation that almost certainly is male-led, right? The CEO, the board, whatever, it's male-led. And you're going to work there, probably middle managements where most of them are. So we're speaking on averages. And you're going to give your life to this corporation. And I've worked in corporate America, and I've fired people, and I've been fired. And like sometimes I fire a guy, or a guy moves on, and I'm like, oh, I'm sad that he's not around anymore. But then I hire someone else to move on with my life. These women give their life to these corporations, and they'll replace them in a second. They get some cheesy glass reward, top sales, top whatever. So you can build up that household. You can think of a corporation as this household with this father head on it. Or you can marry a man, and together you can build a household. And if my wife died today, my life would be forever changed. And she would lose, she would leave a gap in my heart, in my life, and my children. She's already shaped them forever. Don't women want to have that influence, want to get that credit? Children that love you and look up to you, and no one can make food quite like you. No one can our children will remember their mother forever. She will get praise and glory from them. But you work for corporate America, and you pick up some dude on Tinder. You think that's a satisfying life? You think you're going to be satisfied? When I'm old next to my wife, and we look at what we made, we're going to be full of joy. She's going to be happy. She's happy to be married to me and what we're building, right? I am a man worthy of her time. And that's what I tell other men, be worthy of their time. I have these guys that keep they do all the game stuff. And so women like interesting men. So they try to be interesting. I'm like, you're doing it wrong. Like, become interested. Like, become interested in things. Don't do it for the women. Just become that man. So think of it. Here's my big picture: is gravitas is a Roman virtue that men should be working towards. So the word glory talks about weight. So when we talk about God has glory, God has the ultimate weight, the ultimate gravitas. And so God's like the sun in our universe, and we all go around him. But man should be like our earth, and woman should be like the moon. And so me and my wife, we go around God together. He's the center of our life, but she also goes around me in orbit. And so men, how do you get your wife to submit to you? I have more gravitas than her.
Yeah. I love this analogy. This is perfect. Sun,
and
Earth,
and so I'm always telling guys, look, get gravitas. How does Earth hold the moon in its position? Is it by command? It's by gravity. Get some weight. How do you get virtue? You get virtue. It's very simple. You throw yourself into life. You actually work with your hands. You actually do it. And so I have these guys that call me up and ask for advice. And there's this sort of autistic nature. See the red pill? You know, like it's like Asperger's, where they want step 1, 2, 3, and then what do I say on the date? And then what's the proper, like, if there's a 2 set, how do I approach it this way and all this stuff, you know? And you're like, okay, dude, this isn't paint by numbers. At best I can give you is Bob Ross, right? You need to take big principles and apply them, but take risks. Go do it. If you fail, so what? Right? Life is full of abundant opportunities.
I want to interject here. This is important. I think, especially, so I've thought for a long time that, and you're a perfect example of this too, Michael, and George to an extent as well, but particularly you and Tanner, is, you know, you have these huge families and your patriarchs and whatnot. You guys have so much better game than the average pickup artist, dating coach. Like, most of these single guys would have much better success with women, so to speak. They listen to you guys because you get women. You guys are very, very attractive to women. I know that for a fact. No homo. But because of the certainty in your voice and the way you live your life and the principles that are guiding you, that you're speaking about, and that I believe you act on by the way the tone of your voice is coming across. This is like candy to women, especially in today's like wimpy beta male, soy male culture, the soy face and all this crap. This is like crack to women. Because you're like, you know, interesting and this, like, women love it, man. Yeah, your wife's living in heaven, man. Heaven is in her home with you, I guess. Not to
to the guys that are listening, I just say you can do it. Just give yourself, go build something worthy. Be a man. That women don't want you to be the center of the world. They weren't made. Eve was brought to Adam, not Adam to Eve. Yeah. Right? Adam was first, then Eve. It's a created order. And so just like, that's the value. That's how a Christian can actually listen to the 21 convention. Okay. So some of it's highly philosophical and there'll be some disagreements, but so take Jack Donovan and I have some very different ways of looking at the world. However, when I read The Way of Men, it was one of the better books I read on male interactions. I was like, this is actually really good. And I honestly think Robert Glover's No More Mr. Nice Guy, for all its psychobabble and stuff, when you get right down to it, may be the best book that in the Manosphere, in my opinion, like, at least for most guys. But I read that. I was like, yeah, I do that whole covert contract thing, don't I? You know, I want to kill that. So I think guys can learn the practical stuff. I'd love to see more of it in the church, but until then, I'm glad that guys can go to YouTube and listen to these guys on how to work on these things and build gravitas.
I'm just highly, I believe in all this. I agree. I'm just highly, you can't, it's hard for you to imagine, maybe not, but how amusing it is for me to see guys like you and Tanner just live your life and do your thing. And I know that there are women walking around that would have sex with you 100 times faster, like their life depended on it, versus your average pickup artist. You guys are so much more attractive to the average woman, for the average woman to be attracted to you, than all these dudes are just, it's all fake nonsense. They're all losers.
This beta guy, this pastor
yeah.
once told me, I'll give you, this is
Yeah.
really funny. He was trying to take me down a notch. This was in ministry, and ministry can be just brutal, man, because ministry is full of guys that are very blue pill minded beta guys that are really good at management. And because nice guys are so concerned about opinions and how people look at them in appearance, that will get you pretty far in ministry. But this guy was trying to take me down a notch. He's like, look, you're not even very handsome, to which I thought was hilarious. I was just like, look, dude, I've never had an ugly girlfriend my whole life, and my wife's beautiful. I think you don't understand what makes a man attractive. Like, there are men that are just beautiful men, that the symmetry or whatever is solid. But what guys need to understand, like this, I remember talking to an Asian guy. He was really short. And he was talking to me about how short he was and how women don't like short men. I'm like, dude, stop it. Stop getting stuck on that one attribute. Control the controllables. You're not going to get taller overnight. Don't go get big shoes. You look like a fag. Don't do that. You need to, you know what I mean? Like with big heels to get
Robert
taller.
De Niro does this a lot. Yeah.
And so instead, what do you have? Get gravitas. Like, get conviction, stand for something, get good at things. Like, I knew a good friend of mine, I was telling him the other day, I was like, dude, I felt like you started skydiving and riding a motorcycle because it looked risky and you thought women would dig it. I think you should skydive if you really like it, not for women. He said, I do like it. And I was like, because I told my wife, when someone skydives and they're like tied to a man, right, that to me doesn't look very manly. It's like, it's like a kid in an ergo on the front of you or something. Yep. But build gravitas. And this is why men in ministry fall into adultery, is because women are very much attracted to ministers, because attraction for a woman is contextual to status, right? So it's the quarterback, it's the department chair, and you'll hear these women say, oh, I want to be a pastor's wife. No, you don't. You know what it means to be a pastor's wife? My wife gets criticized by women because for every little thing, and our kids are under the magnifying glass. What she's really saying is, I want a high status male.
Yes.
It's all there that's going on. And so what I tell guys, like, just maximize, go as far as you can, have godly ambition, be great, work at it, and women will come. It's like sex. The way you get lots of sex is two things. One, you ask your wife for it. Can we have sex? If you have a good wife, she'll be like, yeah, let's go do it. The other way is just be in control of your environment, and the woman will always want to have sex with you. It won't be a problem. And so it's funny that sex is a product of living a manly life. The more focused you're on it, the less you'll get it. And women are attracting a woman is by and large a byproduct of being a man. So just go be a man. Find a tribe to run with that. Find a father, find a mentor. You know, mentors that are good, you have to ask them to mentor. I'm busy. I got so much going on. I'm not going to ask you a lot of times, you know, so I don't know. I'm getting preachy now. Go on. Sorry.
No, this is great, man. I love it. Just letting you guys go off on this is fantastic. Last question I wanted to go off before we, end the show here. So last question, open to both of you. I've seen Dalrock say from a Christian perspective, and I thought it was interesting. It stuck with me. This is like 6 months ago or something. And he was talking about romantic love in Christianity, but in culture even more widely, but specifically in Christianity. Romantic love is important, but he said it was basically now being, and not even romantic love, just love in general, like this kind of vague, disambiguated version or whatever. It was being prioritized over, being fruitful, multiplying, and basically, I don't remember the exact phrasing of it. Basically, he was saying that romantic love, and this is wrong, like from a Christian perspective, they shouldn't do this. Romantic love is important, but it should not be placed above children and building a family and these things. Do you have any thoughts on that and how that's evolved in the church today for Christian men and for women and whatnot? Does that make sense too? What I'm getting across here?
Yeah, you're talking about how romantic love sanctifies marriage is what he would say all the time.
Yeah. It was interesting that he was just saying that it used to not be like that. It was, and maybe even divorce as a relation is too. It's like, well, women today, the frivolous divorce, like, oh, I feel I don't love him anymore. I love him, but I don't love you, and then they get divorced. And from a Christian perspective, this is wrong, and this is not the purpose of marriage. I guess is bigger than love, is what he was saying. And a lot of Christians seem to have forgotten that. And then you don't feel like you're in love, and then instant divorce, boom, adios. Who cares if it's a sin or whatever, right?
I'd like to hear George. You got some years. You've seen the changes over the last few decades. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Who wrote the book? I think it was Sacred Marriage. Remember that?
Gary Thomas.
Gary Thomas. And he asked the question. I remember one thing from the book that I read I probably read it back in 89 or 90. And he said, what if the purpose of marriage is to make you holy and not make you happy? And I'll tell you what, that screwed me up, man. That just messed up my head for years. And I thought, wait a minute. Thing I've been taught, I got red pilled at that moment about marriage. And I thought to myself, holy cow, what if God brings a woman in my life to make me a better man, not to deplete me, but to make me better, to make me more holy, to make me more obedient to God, to make me literally a better man, filled with integrity, godliness, discipline, versus just like, woohoo, I have a hot wife. I have a wife that makes me dinner, gives me sex whenever I want. Like, woohoo. Like, she's not a toy. She's not an accessory. Right now, all cars come with air conditioning and power windows. You can't find a car that doesn't have that anymore. There was a time when you would buy a stripped down version of a car, and they'd be like, well, do you want air conditioning? Do you want power windows and power, what did they used to say? Loaded. That was the word. I got a car that's fully loaded. Now, even like the most economical cars are 100% loaded. And that was considered a good car. When it comes to wives and women, we want a wife that is loaded. We want the power windows. We want the power brakes, the navigation system. And we feel like we have a good deal there. And I think from the buying a car mindset in looking for a wife, to what can a woman teach me? How can she affect me, make me a better man? Like, for instance, in my dating life, honestly, as I've dated women, there's some women I just want to eat half a pizza and drink a 6-pack of beer. Other women have made me want to go to the gym and work out. So what woman is better for me? The one who inspires me to go work out. Some people would say, well, you should have that inspiration on your own, and you shouldn't have that external locus of motivation. That's just life. So what I have learned to weed out is the women that not make me be complacent, but that where I tend to be more complacent. I find that when I am loved properly, or I should say respected by a woman properly, I work my ass off. I work 18 hours a day, and I can love her better. You become interdependent on each other. She wants to be loved. I want to be respected. And I feel that the holiness factor versus the happiness factor, the minute that I made that shift, that mindset shift, everything changed. So what I'm looking for now is a woman who will contribute to me being a better man. And what I'm attracting now is not women, like when I was a young man, I was attracting women whose mindset was, what can you do for me? Right now, especially now that I've announced that I want to be married, and by throwing themselves at me, literally, and they want to cook me dinner. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? They are literally telling me they can't wait to serve me. If we were married, when you come home from work, I would rub your shoulders, and I'm like, what planet am I on? I'm not used to this. But what happened, the only thing that's different is my mindset. I'm not getting married to be happy. I'm getting married to be fulfilled, to be holy, and at the end of my life, I want God to say, well done. Well done. Not, oh, wow, you got a whole bunch of cars and a big house and a lot of money in the bank. Good for you. It doesn't work that way.
All that stuff turns to dust at the end of the day. It's like meaningless after you die. other than people you give it to, maybe. But even then, it's just dust, 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 dust. I did want to bring up something Michael brought up earlier that I thought was interesting. And he talked about how women are more difficult to fix versus men who are easier to fix. And I agree with that. And I think that's one of the reasons that currently we see a manosphere that's evolved for over 20 years now, men improving themselves, fixing themselves, resolving trauma, fatherlessness, learning better social skills and these things about relationship skills, health and fitness, losing weight, getting stronger. There's a lot of elements to it. It's a very masculine thing, and men are prone and better adapted, I agree, to fixing themselves if they're damaged and whatever. And women are not. And I wanted to bring that up because when people see Make Women Great Again, like the media, the normies didn't understand this at all in the media. But Make Women Great Again is not really meant to fix adult women. It can maybe if they really want to get better. I don't think it's impossible. I just think it's unlikely. The real purpose of this conference and why I want you guys speaking there, we're all going to speak there in about 12 days now or whatever it is, really soon, as I want to create videos and content, positive media for young women that have not ruined their lives yet, that are not 34-year-old cat ladies, zooming in fast on geriatric pregnancies and the end of their fertility, the end of their life, essentially. So as a young woman anyway, as a young fertile woman. So I really want to make a change for young, Zoomer women and younger even that are going to be 18 and 19 and 20 soon, a couple of years. And this content needs to be available for them because right now they have nothing. The churches have, fallen to feminism and all this stuff and this garbage. Culture is wider culture is even worse. You got, WAP, you got Cardi B crap, you have unlimited toxic feminist dogma, of every color and every sort. It's rampant. It's the real plague. It's the real pandemic. And we need to push back with something positive that every woman can embrace, of any faith and of any race and whatever creed and whatever. I don't care if she's born in Florida or Alaska, whatever. I want her to have good content and make good choices to the best of her ability. Hopefully she has a family structure to, facilitate that. But even if not, we can't expect women to do better if they have no method of doing better. What are they going to do? Look, there's nothing. They have nowhere to turn right now. Nothing. Maybe they have a good pastor or a good church to go to. Maybe, but that's unusual. That's rare. So they have nothing. They have nothing but Cardi B to learn how to be a woman from, or Michelle Obama or some garbage. So anyway, it's been a really fantastic show. Fabulous show. I had a lot of fun with this. It's really great. Really appreciate both of you coming on today for the Red Pill and Religion, episode 119 of the Red Man Group. Final words where everybody can find you guys and learn more from you.
You can find me on Twitter, is where I'm most active. The handle is This Is Foster, THISIS Foster, FOSTER. I do a podcast when I feel like it. So every once in a while, that's It's Good to Be a Man, and you can go to itsgoodtobeaman.com, where me and a partner, non-tenant, we're writing stuff in the middle of writing a book right now on this topic, which will be published by Canon Press and released next year. Canon Press is a great place for Christians to find good stuff on sexuality. So highly recommend checking them out. So Twitter, that's where I'm at.
All right. Sweet. George?
Yeah, I can be found on YouTube, George Bruno, and I have a lifestyle channel that there's something there for everybody. It's provocative, it's educational, it's challenging, and also on Twitter as well.
All right. Thanks, boys. We'll talk soon. I'll see both of you soon in Florida at 21 Summit and the 21 Convention and the 21 Convention Patriarch Edition and the 22 Convention. It's going to be a great time. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in today live to the show. And if you're watching this later or even now, smash the like button, leave a comment, and share it on Twitter and all that. We appreciate it. Help the show grow. Adios, and I'll see you maybe next Saturday. Otherwise, I'll see you soon after that. Peace.